In this episode of Oh Hi Stories, I'm thrilled to sit down with Brian Elms, a leader in innovation, process improvement, and government efficiency. Our conversation is full of practical insights on driving change, breaking down barriers, and making organizations more efficient and effective, no matter the industry. If you're passionate about improving how things work, thinking about the future, and creating meaningful innovation, then this episode is for you.
Oh, hi.
Oh, hi. It is so fun to have you here. Oh my God, this is so fun. One of my favorite people in the world, really, truthfully. Definitely one of my most favorite innovators that I ever met in the government space. And, you are really the king of government innovation. So I'm just so happy to have you here. And yes, oh, hi, welcome.
Wow, the king. I'm gonna let to live up here. So we'll do my best to make it entertaining at least.
Yes, exactly. Okay, well, I'm so happy to have you. So much of the world has changed even since you and I have met, but it's been such a fun experience to go through those changes with you and someone like you who sees the world the way you do. And in the government space, I think people like you are so rare. So tell me a little bit about you personally, and then obviously professionally, and your journey to really becoming the innovator entrepreneur that you are today.
Dina, that's hilarious. It's so hard to start from square one with people that you've known for a while. But for those of you who are listening or watching, I'm Brian Elms. I work with Change Agents Training. We are a internal consultancy and external support help for a lot of governments, helping them figure out ways to improve their service deliveries, make sure that they're constantly seeking to improve the way they engage with their residents, their citizens, their visitors. And I got into this about 12 or so years ago at the city and county of Denver, where we launched a program called the Peak Academy. That program has since been replicated by over 50 different governments around the country, some outside of the country. And that program is designed to train public servants in process improvement techniques and problem solving techniques to improve their work. Our biggest asset in municipal government is typically your employees. The more your employees know on how to solve problems, the more they can do. It is really rewarding to watch people internally solve big, hairy challenges that have been coming around for decades. Whether it's onboarding or permitting or code enforcement or booking inmates, releasing inmates, adopting children, adopting dogs, you name it. I have worked on it from the medical examiner to food stamps. It is a really cool place to get to work every day. And I really dive into helping the employee unpack what's going on in their work, find the useless parts of their job, and get rid of them. And our goal is to help them get rid of the useless work, stop letting it suck the soul out of your job and out of your fun, and do things that have more value.
I love it. And there's a lot of that in government. And so it is really needed. And I know that staff feel empowered and they appreciate the techniques and the advice that you provide. What was the first opportunity that you saw at the city of Denver where you knew you could make this kind of an impact? I know you've touched everything in the city side, and I think it's a great point to make because people often forget what local government does and how critical it is and how important it is. And you just gave some specific examples, and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of them. But what was it that you saw first and knew you had a chance to make this change in local government?
I don't know if it was a single thing, but someone asked me the other day what got me into the world of process improvement and problem solving. And I was sort of thrusted into that. And I don't know, a lot of people know this story, but I think it was 2010 when an airplane skidded off the runway at Denver International Airport. And at the time, I was in government affairs and I had to respond to the incident and let our partner governments know what was going on. Well, when the airplane skidded off the runway, all the fire departments in the city and county of Denver sent additional trucks. They were driving down to get to this incident. No one was killed, by the way. It was a 150 souls on board. The plane skidded off the runway. A lot of people were injured, and a group of Denver city and county employees put people in the back of their cars and drove them to the hospital because only one ambulance showed up. And
Wow.
because of that incident, I was then thrusted into this scenario where we were to blame for everything. And Denver Health, who runs the ambulance system and has some of the work there, kept pushing us to do a process improvement. And no one at the airport wanted to be part of it. And I, because of my relationship, was supposed to be part of it. So I was part of this training that we did to improve the way that we provided services from the ambulance side to the airport side. That got me into a whole new world of how to see process, how to see services, and how to design them. And because of that instance, I immediately started jumping into the world of process improvement and problem solving in a structured way. And I think instinctually I was always there, but it wasn't until I learned the technique on top of the instinct that it became more of an expertise. And I think that really drove to, wow, if I could do this with Denver Health, the airport, and the city and county of Denver, what could we do for the entire city and county of Denver? And at the time, we were in a massive economic crisis. And so we were cutting budgets like nobody's business. And in cutting budgets, we started cutting back on people. We started cutting back on training opportunities. And so when we launched Peak Academy, it was basically an effort to win back the employees' trust. And our idea was, if we invest in them and invest in their problem solving, we'll watch the flourishing take place. And the rest is history, right? 20,000 people trained, $60 million in savings. Like it has significant financial impact and significant employee impact, especially in Denver, but all over the country.
I love it. I think one of the things that you and I had talked about at some point, maybe it was during the pandemic, was sometimes it's hard to measure what that impact is. And the work that you do, you've been able to do that. And I think with the work that I've done with citizen engagement and social media following, I'm always like, I wish I could put a number on that. Like, I wish I could, and you can show the impact in a lot of ways, but I didn't always know how it translated, because that's the sell, right? Especially in government, right? If I can save tax dollars or, drive new revenue, whatever that looks like, that's really, where the success happens. And what's interesting and what you talk about, and I think what you and I have also in common, is that you quickly realize that this is something scalable, right? These weren't just problems that you saw in the city of Denver. These are problems that exist in every city across the country.
It's not just in government either, Dana. Like I experience the same scenarios in all of my private sector clients. Onboarding is a challenge. Hiring people fast enough is a challenge. I worked with a Fortune 500 that had 7 approvals in order to get an offer letter out the door. And because they had 7 approvals to get an offer letter out the door, they were losing hirees because other companies were beating them to the punch. And I just remember going through a change with them, and we landed on no money, no tech, and using literally a mail merge. And we cut 6 days out of their process.
Right. Oh, I know. I remember talking to you about this with just printing costs, or, I remember we had a discussion about interoffice mail one time, because during the pandemic, I realized there were triplicate forms in our HR department. Why were there triplicate forms? I don't know. But beyond that, there was interoffice mail that was being used to move them around. And suddenly no one was in the office. They were all working from home. And these envelopes were sitting on people's desks. And I thought, oh my God. And I remember when the pandemic hit, and I'd love to talk to you about that too, because you were someone that saw the world change, and you had been used to going in person because cities require that, right? You needed to be there. You needed to handhold them, build that relationship. I know how this work goes. And when the pandemic struck, government really was stuck because they were so used to operating that way. And you had to change not only the way you were training, right? But then you had to figure out how you were going to be communicating with cities. And we started virtual innovation sessions with you using Microsoft Teams. And I know a lot of cities at the time didn't even know what Microsoft Teams was or a Zoom meeting. And so you came, right, an avalanche of all the things that you'd been thinking about preparing cities for. And then we were met at a point in time with a pandemic that forced us into that space. And I remember I called you first because I thought, who besides me telling them, oh, well, Dana's been telling us we should use virtual meetings and Teams for a long time, right? And I can tell you until I'm blue in the face. But for some reason, your perspective on the outside, having lived this in a city space and then scaling this to other cities and your experience across the country, you have that expertise. You could come in and say, hey, why are you doing it this way? Here's the way we're going to survive this pandemic. And you were someone that really I called on to help us navigate that too. And you came and joined, and you could easily, as an outsider, say, wait, you do what? You have, again, how many steps in your process or whatever. And so talk to me too about how the world change in the last 4 years, especially, has quickly escalated the training you do and the work within cities, right? And what are those barriers that you still run up against?
The idea that everything has to be done with a butt and a seat has always thrown me off. And that performance and work takes place when you're seated also throws me
Wow.
off. That is a white collar belief. No blue collar work is done in a seat. I mean, some of it is when you're driving a lawnmower, you're driving a police car, you're driving a dump truck. But most, that doesn't take place in the office. 50% of a municipality typically is done and performed in the field. So anyone who is of the mindset that people are sitting and getting work done is completely wrong. It also shocks me how little people have understanding for where their people work. And it is a really hard lesson to learn. And one of the lessons I had to really work with HR in a lot of different organizations is understand that when you're emailing an information session to your employees and they don't have access to your email, they're unaware of it. 60% of the people we emailed to let them know that there was a snow day and they didn't have to come to work until 10 or 11, they didn't receive the email because they don't have a handheld device. They don't sit in front of a computer as their job. It was really eye-opening. So that's number one. Breaking this understanding that you have to be seated to watch, to learn, to do anything drives me insane. The second piece is people learn all the time on YouTube. So why aren't we taking advantage of that the same way that everyone else is? When the pandemic happened, I had 2 or 3 clients who really pushed me to build out all of our training so you could watch it anywhere, anytime, totally on demand. And because of them, we built, 250 different modules that you can watch in a patrol car. You can watch when you're in the field. You can watch at lunch while you're eating out next to a fountain. There are so many ways that you can interact with people that don't have to be forcing people to come to this specific place, this specific time. And that's where the magic happens. It doesn't happen that way. And all of the research in where good ideas come from or where change takes place, it usually takes place in informal meetups, informal collisions. And because of that, you want to create an environment that allows for it. So one, we stopped flying. I don't do a lot of in-person trainings. I did one this week. I haven't done one in 3 years. So that was cool. I got to relive those days. I also forget how tiring that is for a facilitator and for it's just exhausting.
Oh my God. And how much time you save. Yeah. Oh yeah. But think about how much time it takes. We used to talk about that with just getting in your car and driving to the office.
Well, and I'm flying to you, right? It's even worse.
Right.
I mean, the
Right. Oh
amount
yeah,
of time that
completely.
you're sucking to get people to the right place, it it absolutely
Hmm.
drives me nuts. So yeah, we moved all of our stuff online. We started colliding in Zoom. We challenged people to come to informal meetups. We challenged people to do all sorts of stuff. And what's cool, because of COVID, I think I'm more into changing the way that we do things. And because of COVID and how it sort of flipped a switch in my brain where people learn, people learn on demand. People learn when the challenge is happening, not always before the challenge is taking place. If you have a broken pipe, Dana, you Google, how do I fix this leak? Well, I want you to be able to do that with, how do I speed up this permit? How do I hire people faster? How do I do this?
Yep.
And I want you to be able to see a video where we're interacting with people at the same challenge. The same challenge that you had when you were working in Arizona is the same challenge that I had in Denver. It's the same challenge they have in Pittsburgh. It's the same challenge they have in Port St. Lucie, Florida, right? It's very,
Yep.
very similar. And we all go through this, weird understanding that we think we're different when the similarities are glaring.
Right. Oh my God. So many things to touch on. I want to go back to the butts and seats because I think about this all the time. We couldn't figure out originally why our 311 system, our issues were hanging open so long. And it was literally because streets workers they did not have smartphones, even in their personal lives. Not only
Yep.
were they not given them at work
Yep.
to use at work, they did not have them in their personal lives. And all it was a simple training of light bulb moment, right? Oh, we need to go back to them and empower them and teach them how to close out the issues, right? And I remember that so clearly and thinking, you have to understand what you're working with. And these are complex. Oh, nothing is more complex than a city organization. You talked about, you've got patrol cars and police officers, you've got garbage truck drivers, you've got streets workers, you've got, people that are in an office, some that are not. And some that you probably think nowadays. And so that's another really interesting point to make, but it is so critical. And I think it's exactly right. And then you talk about this idea again of, meeting people where they are, going and delivering information, whether it's a video or the services that you provide in a way that people want to receive them. And I just think the world and communities and cities are outpacing government, right? Like they're evolving so quickly. And when you go to bed, when you wake up in the morning, government is being outrun. And it's not hard to figure out that because people are living their lives online and like you said, they want to watch a YouTube video or they want to pay a bill with 2 clicks in their hand. They're not going to drive into City Hall to pay their utility bill anymore. I mean, that is on a rare occasion. And yet we build systems or keep and hold on to systems for that one person that might still drive in and drop that bill off, right? You see this all the time, I know.
I mean,
You know?
October 1, the county, Jefferson County, Alabama, launches an online business licensing portal where all businesses in Jefferson County, Alabama, for the first time, will be able to renew their licenses online. It is going to save them hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it's also going to increase the amount of money that they receive in taxes. And we're estimating that they are going to receive an additional $5 million this year, just because they've made a system easier. It's really, really cool to see. But they were one of those people where you had to come into the courthouse to get your license. And at the courthouse, you would pay your tax bill and then they would give you your license. Really, really fascinating, super old school way of doing it. Not unusual way of doing it. And now they're going to be able to do that October 1. What's really cool, Dana, is I keep seeing this everywhere. I don't know if I wholeheartedly agree with you that government is outpaced. I don't see a lot of for-profit companies that thrive in customer service.
Good point.
Whether you're Comcast or United Airlines, you do not thrive in. Look at Delta. Delta Airlines completely failed a few months ago. And then, last Christmas, it was Southwest, the company who everyone says is the best customer service company in the country, completely failed at getting people to their loved ones over Christmas. I see so many challenges in the private sector that I see in the public sector. The thing I'll tell
Mhm.
you what I think they have in common: bureaucracy. The larger the company, the harder it is to move. The more people,
Yep.
the harder it is to perform. And those
Yeah. I see
organisms,
that in, yeah,
those organisms
in
sort of,
government too.
yes,
hmm
absolutely.
I heard somebody say to me once, the larger the city, the bigger the problems, right? The silos start to exist
Yep.
where you have police departments living completely on their own,
Yep.
separate from any relationship with the mayor's office, right?
Yep.
In a tiny town, you're not going to have that, right? But so you're exactly right. Those are the same similarities that you see in the city space. Some cities that are really far along, right? Like just like companies and corporations or brands that are long established and they're a household name, and other cities that are just getting started in this work. I do a lot of data work within cities, and you see it runs the gamut, right? Cities that have long standing systems already in place that are so far down the road, you're going to have to take a different approach to move them than some of those that are just thinking about this for the first time, right? And so I guess it is true that that would be the same with large corporations and companies and in the private sector.
Yeah. Think about Denise in South Bend and
hmm
Denise's ability to navigate that city. Denise is the head of IT and innovation for South Bend, Indiana. She has one of the most sophisticated 311 systems I've ever seen in my entire life. She has one of the most sophisticated CRM systems that they hand built, and they are responsive. You want to see a city that responds to people well: South Bend, Indiana. I mean,
Yep.
would you have thought of that like off the top of your head?
Well, I would have, because they had this mayor, Pete Buttigieg, who I'm a big fan of. And we were fortunate enough in Gilbert to go through the Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Program with him. And so I am aware that they are on the forefront. Also, believe it or not, the current mayor of South Bend, Indiana, used more data points in their state of city address than any city in the country in the last year. So it makes sense, right? But no, would it be in the cities that would first come to mind? Definitely not. But it makes sense why, right?
I think what's really cool between Mayor Pete and Mayor Jim and Santi and Denise, they've had a tradition of putting in really forward thinking people in times of crisis and in times of non crisis. And because of that, they never battled in what they were doing. They built on other people. And I think when you
Oh, I love
see
that.
success, whether it's a city, whether it's a company, it's the old team isn't the enemy. We're going to build on what they did versus tear what they did down. I see this in government more
Say
than
it again.
anywhere
Say it.
else.
Yes. Say it again. Say it
We
again.
we create enemies of the previous administration, and then we tear everything that they did down as opposed to building it to be better. We don't think in terms of, hey, this is a place where we want to continue success. We do this like political thing where we blame them. Oh, yeah, they didn't do well with food assistance. We're going to do better. Instead of, they did these really cool parts with food assistance really well. We're going to build on it. Oh, the last administration failed at homelessness. When you're blaming the last group, those people still work there. So when you go to try to make change, you have to convince the people who you just villainized to try to help you. And I see this,
Wow.
I see this in government more than the private sector. In the private sector, I have seen a new boss take over and destroy the company because of everything the previous person did, and they let everyone go. I have seen. But in more cases in government, you have this adversarial understanding of the election instead of a building on. Success is
Yes.
built.
And I think you are spot on. And I see this in cities everywhere. When they lose that vision at the top or the mayor, everything seems to stall with it.
Yeah.
Or the mayor leaves, they take their leadership team with them, and everything is stalled. So the only way to drive true, sustainable, innovative change through an organization is to get to the bottom, right?
Yeah.
And it's important to have that at the top. And you're right. That vision at the top should be a long-term vision, even if you're only there for hold that seat for 4 years. But cities, I think, are really struggling with this. And I just said to someone the other day, I said, 2 things that all cities have in common: residents and a mayor. And all cities have these 2 things, right? And there's oftentimes a disconnect between these 2 things. What do the residents really want? What does the mayor think they want? Or what does the mayor want, right? So bridging that divide and arming the mayor or whoever's at the top with what the residents really want is so critical, right? And that should continue regardless of a new mayor comes in, a mayor goes out, because guess who's still there? Those residents, just like those employees that you just mentioned, right? And so I'm always really focused on trying to understand and figure out, how do you get that sentiment and understanding and kind of fuse these things together to bridge that gap between, and now I think it's being even more driven with technology, right? You're kind of at the center of, you've got this mayor and the leadership, you've got your residents, and then you have technology over here, and you're kind of in the center of like, how am I going to pull all of these things together, right? This is the stuff that I think about, but God, you hit it on the head, because how are cities going to continue to move forward if we can't figure out a way to, regardless of mayoral change or leadership change or a council, because sometimes it's not just the mayor, but it's, like you said, these elections or the politics of it change. To me, the residents are still there. The people are still there, right? And it's highly unlikely that is changing that quickly, overnight, even though we see the pendulum swing back and forth. But at the end of the day, local government is still providing critical services, and these aren't political services. I always say, it's like, you want your toilet to flush, your trash to get picked up, your lights to turn on. Like, don't we all have these things in common? So I think it's just so critical. And I think it's it's standing in the way of progress for cities.
Oh, completely. I think it's a huge detriment where you try to prove that you're better, or you try to prove that you've done, something different. There's so many cool things that these cities have the opportunity to do. I know I love working in the public world, in this public sphere, more than I love working in the private sector. I love my private sector clients. They're fun. I think they're very interesting. They have really cool ideas. And I just love being able to help people when they need help. And there is nothing cooler than being able to get to do that. Whether it's a birth certificate for a new mommy, or a person who's launching a new pizza shop. I love it. I think it is beyond rewarding to be in this space. And we get to do it. A lot of people have to do this work. We get to do this work. And it really supercharges me and gets me motivated to try to find better ways to do it.
I love it. Tell me about, obviously with AI and tech and changing, I know you're thinking a lot about this. Tell me what you see as opportunities, right?
Yeah.
For cities. I gave this example that actually was a city of Denver the other day about they deployed a chatbot, and the number 1 and 2 issues that came through were, the first was homelessness, people looking for shelter, and the second was food assistance. So people looking for food, and the city was pretty stunned by that those would be the top 2 needs. And I thought, yeah, if those 2 population groups can use the chatbot, then probably anyone can. But I'm hearing that a lot of cities are being offered the tech, but they don't know how to implement it. They're stuck, and there are now companies like Granicus who are saying, hey, we will deploy text messaging services, chatbots for you. A lot of that they already provide, their website providers are for these cities, and they're offering these new tools, but they're finding that cities are hesitant to actually deploy them. Does that surprise you?
AI surprises me every single day. So I'm not necessarily shocked. I launched an AI company about 6 months ago to help with problem solving. What I keep suggesting to local governments or to anyone, if you're using AI to come up with ideas, that's okay. But you should be using AI to reduce the amount of workload you have, to help save money with the services that you're providing, to figure out how it's going to either help our customer get access to something faster, help us do something faster, or help us eliminate something. That's really what you should be looking at. If you're putting a ton of money into AI in your local government, I think it might be a mistake. You should be seeing it as a way to save money.
Absolutely. And I think help people, help us, help me, you do our jobs better,
Yeah.
faster, open us up time to do other things. I
Absolutely.
mean, again, right? It's a tool in our tool belt to embrace, right? And I think you articulated that perfectly. And I hope that people listening, especially in the government space, will listen, because I think you saw this happen in a lot of cities too around innovation. Just hiring a chief innovation officer doesn't drive innovation into your
Well,
organization.
it
and your
actually
culture.
can stop innovation. As a former innovation director, I know all too well the biggest barrier to innovation is.
Right? It's not a position. It's a way of thinking. It's a culture change.
Yeah.
And I think this is the same example, right? Saying, oh, we're gonna, like you said, invest in the technology or hire a position is not gonna get you there, right?
Well, I also think
And
it has a lot of, it reminds me a lot of the Smart Cities initiative, where people are selling things that you don't need. And I think as government employees, as government people, or even in the private sector, think about why you need this, not how cool it is. Does this reduce the time it takes me to perform this service? If the answer is yes, then you should look at it. Does this make the service have better quality? If the answer is yes, then you should look at it. Will this save us money because of those things? If the answer is yes, you should take a look at it. If the answer is no, but it's really freaking cool, maybe you should just play with it. And I
love that.
I get driven nuts by AI companies coming to me and they're selling nonsense. They're absolutely selling nonsense. What I developed in our company, Riverword, the idea is reducing the time it takes to get discovery, reducing the time it takes for us to build process maps and flowcharts, reducing the time it takes for us to argue about what it looks like in real life, reducing the time it takes for us to analyze it. That helps us to the tune of 50 to 60 hours on a normal project. I'm now doing in 2 hours. That to me is the selling point of AI. If you're using AI to help you deliver services, I'm a little nerve-wracked about that.
Yeah, it's helping you to improve what you're doing, right? Like the first thing I thought of is, how can this help me, right? As I'm building a business or serving clients, or how can this help me to do what I do better? And so that's how everyone should be thinking. And
I mean, I wish they were.
And I know
Dina.
it sounds simple.
Yeah. I wish they were.
And it sounds
not happening that way. I mean, I have seen so much vaporware. It is nauseating. I've also had companies come to me and pitch me ideas of what their AI could do. Well, that doesn't solve a problem. Look, if a chatbot solves a problem that reduces your call intake on 311, boom, that's a great idea. If a chatbot helps connect people to the right department faster and gets them a license quicker, boom, that's a great idea. But if a chatbot is just another avenue into 311 and your hold times are still 9 minutes, it doesn't matter.
Well, I know for us in 311 in Gilbert, we eliminated our call center 12 years ago and forced everyone to use the app, and everyone thought we were crazy. But I'd like to say it wasn't crazy and it was successful. And we had the most people on the 311 system at the time. It was SeeClickFix that had ever downloaded their app. And they're like, what did you do? I'm like, well, we forced them to.
Yeah.
And, again, we had some advantages at the time where the average age was 32. And so we had the ability again to think that way. But I would argue today, even more so. I know how my parents spend their time online and they're in their 70s. So I just think thinking that way we have to be, right? And you just said it and we've talked about it. And I've loved this conversation because it isn't just in the government space. It's in any space. This is how we need to be thinking about, like you said, improving service delivery, eliminating unnecessary steps to save money and time to be more efficient for all of us, right? To open up our own time to serve others, to open up our organizations to save money and time, to give us time to do other things to serve our customers and residents, that this is really critical. And I just love that we got to have this conversation together to talk about this.
Dina, it's so much fun. This is like why I get up in the morning. I get to do this on a daily basis, whether it's the city of Seattle, whether it's the, town of Louisville, it doesn't matter. It's so much fun to work.
Well, it has been such a pleasure to have you. Before I let you go, I'm going to do a little rapid fire with you. Okay.
You didn't prepare me for this. I'm not good at rapid fire.
Okay. Well, let's see. So, what gets you out of bed in the morning?
Oh man. What gets me out of bed in the morning is knowing that we're going to be able to deliver a birth certificate on demand to a new mommy the day she asks for it. Knowing that people don't have to drive to pay taxes anymore.
I love it. Okay, what's the best piece of advice you have for other innovators or entrepreneurs?
Training. The more training you get, the better off you're going to be. Find really, really good, high quality training to get you using technique over instinct.
I love that. Okay. And finally, where do you look for inspiration?
Oh my gosh, my daughter inspires me all the time. She is such a prolific writer, super tear-inducing child. She posts every day about a new band that she has found. And her Instagram, Whiny Girl Instagram is fantastic. Every day it's a new song and why she likes it.
Oh my God, I love that.
It is really, really fun. The last piece of inspiration that I will tell you is I teach at UNLV and I get to teach in undergrad and in graduate school. I've never seen such a thirst for knowledge and information in undergraduate and undergraduate students. It is so life affirming to watch them go through our courses, to turn in just phenomenal writing in terms of how they see the world, the hope and the opportunities that they find in simple things. And I think if everyone was teaching in high school or an undergrad or a grad school, I think they would see that too.
I love it. As a daughter of two teachers, a former teacher myself, and a mother to two daughters, I feel you as far as inspiration. So I couldn't agree with you more. And it has been so fun to have this conversation with you. Really, truthfully, you have been such an inspiration to me. And so I'm just so grateful to have met you along this path that we're forging forward and still trying, right? And I think it's just so important and more critical than ever. So thank you for taking the time. And I look forward to everything that's to come. And hopefully we get to do some of that together.
I love it, friend. Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Ojai Stories podcast. Please leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice and stay tuned for more episodes coming soon. And visit our website at ohaicommunications.com.